Some fundamental dichotomies in linguistics. There are so many dichotomies or distinctions, we could say, in linguistics we are going to learn from today. And our first topic is here. Modern linguistics is based on some fundamental concepts which were expounded by linguists in the beginning of 20th century. The most influential of these were Leonard Bloomfield, Noam Chomsky, and Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure. So यहाँ पे स्टूडेंट्स ये देखें अकॉर्डिंग टू दिस चंक कि मॉडर्न लिंग्विस्टिक्स में बहुत सारी टर्मिनोलॉजीज जो है वो हम पढ़ते हैं. देयर आर टर्मिनोलॉजीज which state different grammatical or linguistic studies and this began in 20th century. तो उसमें जो बहुत ही नामवर हमारे पास जो लिंग्विस्ट हैं जिन्होंने इन जो है वो डिस्टिंक्शंस के ऊपर या बेसिक टर्मिनोलॉजीज़ के ऊपर लिंग्विस्टिक्स में काम किया है, उनमें लियोनार्ड ब्लूमफील्ड का नाम है, नॉम चॉम्स्की है और स्विस लिंग्विस्ट फर्डिनेंड डी सॉसर, इन्होंने जो है वो बहुत काम किया है. सो लेट्स लर्न एंड स्टडी दीज ऑल डायकोटोमीज फ्रॉम दिस लेक्चर. So here, number one, syntagmatic and paradigmatic relation. Syntagmatic and paradigmatic relation are introduced by Ferdinand de Saussure in 1974, the founding father of linguistics, to distinguish two kinds of signifiers. Signifiers means terms or word forms. तो सिंटैग्मेटिक एंड पैराडिग्मेटिक जो है ये रिलेशंस जो है फर्डिनेंड डी सॉस्योर ने दिए हैं, जो कि फाउंडिंग फादर हैं लिंग्विस्टिक्स के, और इन्होंने जो है वो दो टर्म्स में डिस्टिंक्शन बताया है हमें, या कहें कि फ़र्क बताया है. सो टुडे वी आर गोइंग टू लर्न अबाउट दीज सिग्निफायर्स. सो नंबर वन इज़ पोजिशनिंग सिंटैग्मेटिक, सिंटैग्मेटिक जिसको हम पोजिशनिंग कहते हैं, एंड नंबर टू and the other concerns substitution paradigmatic. So how syntagmatic is positioning and how paradigmatic is substitution or substituting, let's learn one by one in separate way. So here today, if we are looking at the definition of syntagmatic, syntagmatic are sequential relationships between elements of language system is called सिंटैग्मेटिक. सीक्वेंशियल रिलेशनशिप को हम कहते हैं कि ये सिंटैग्मेटिक जो है वो स्टडी है. लाइकवाइज हियर इज अ सेंटेंस, दे आर बार्गेनिंग ऑन फेयर. लाइक अनदर सेंटेंस, इट इज अली इज वर्किंग ऑन करप्शन. सो यू सी, नंबर वन part of the sentence is subject, and number two is verb, and number three is object. So this is the sequential learning a language that we always put subject at first, then verb, then object. Mostly this is the sequence of making a sentence. Likewise, if we're talking about the second sentence, it is having the same sequence like subject, verb, and then object. So this sequential study in linguistics is called syntagmatic. Hopefully this would have been helping for all of you. This is one of the easiest way to define syntagmatic study in linguistics. And here is another term which we are going to talk about, paradigmatic. Class relationships between elements belonging to the same class. यानी class relationship को जो है वो paradigmatic relation कहा जाता है. जैसे कि Ali is working on corruption. Likewise, subject, verb, object, as we talked about in syntagmatic, and then they are bargaining on fair, again the same. So this was the sequential study we talked about, but this study means word class. दिस इज कॉल्ड क्लास स्टडी और पैराडिग्मेटिक। यानी कि पहले हमने अली के इस्तेमाल किया, अली की जगह कोई और वर्ड भी इस्तेमाल कर सकते थे सब्जेक्ट के अंदर, अली होगा या ही होगा या दे होगा। इज़ वर्किंग, यहाँ पे जो है उसकी जगह जो है आर बार्गेनिंग या कुछ और वर्ब जो है आर रनिंग और समथिंग एल्स वी कुड say, are on corruption, so on fair. so here in object जो है वो ये भी ऑब्जेक्ट है, ये भी ऑब्जेक्ट है, यानी ये वर्ड क्लास है, एक की जगह दूसरा वर्ड जो है हम इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं। सो दिस इज स्टडी इज कॉल्ड paradigmatic study. Let's learn in an other way. For example, you see there is a sentence, the ridiculous girl fell into the pond. Now despite of ridiculous, we could use another adjective like silly. Silly girl fell into the pond. Like foolish girl fell into the pond. Like funny girl fell into the pond. Likewise, we are just changing the classes of words. We are changing the different words. So this is study. Likewise, paradigmatic, in absentia, vertical. This vertical study is called paradigmatic study. And the sequential study means number one is subject, verb, and then object. So this sequential study is called syntagmatic. Hopefully, this would have been informative for all of you. Here is another way to learn the same relationship. A word may be said to have syntagmatic relations with other words which occur in sentence in which it appears. सिंटेगमेटिक रिलेशन जो है वो वर्ड्स जो है सीक्वेंस में हम स्टडी करने को कहते हैं सेंटेंस के अंदर, बट पैराडिग्मेटिक रिलेशंस विद अदर्स वर्ड्स दैट कुड बी सब्सटीट्यूटेड फॉर इट इन दी सेंटेंस। मगर पैराडिग्मेटिक रिलेशन जो है वो हम सब्सटीट्यूटिंग वर्ड्स को कहते हैं कि सेंटेंस के अंदर एक ही जगह दूसरा वर्ड जो इस्तेमाल करने को सब्सटीट्यूट, दूसरा वर्ड इस्तेमाल करने को हम पैराडिग्मेटिक रिलेशन कहते हैं। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, हियर इज अनदर पिक्चर आई वुड लाइक टू टेल यू. For example, I gave Tracy the book. Now, this sequential study is called syntagmatic study because we are using first subject and then verb and then object and so on. So, likewise, you see this arrow. This is syntagmatic study of a sentence. But despite of gave, we could change other verbs as well. Like I passed Tracy the book. I handed Tracy the book. So this is study. This is called paradigmatic relations. Okay, we are substituting the words at the place of one. So this study is called paradigmatic relations. What is suitable method for teaching grammatical points to second and foreign language learners? So this is the question. There are many questions like these to have an idea of importance of grammar to learn a language. There's a number of ways have been expounded to study grammar. Like grammar study के लिए जो है वो बहुत सारे ऐसे points चाहिए जिसमें हम grammar पढ़ रहे होते हैं, सीख रहे होते हैं। तो ये जो दो terms हम आज dichotomies में use कर रहे हैं, syntagmatic and paradigmatic, is actually the result of learning grammar for the foreign or other languages. Paradigmatic relations are widely used in theory and other knowledge organization systems, while syntagmatic relations are generally related to co-occurrences in some context. Co-occurrence in some context यानी हर context में जो है वो मुख्तलिफ वर्ड्स का इस्तेमाल। और पैराडिग्मेटिक जो है वो वाइडली यूज इन थिसॉरी। थिसॉरी में आपको पता है सिनोनिम्स, हमें बहुत सारे सिनोनिम्स मिल रहे होते हैं। थिसॉरी डिक्शनरी की बात हो रही है। तो दैट इज स्टडी आर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन और सिस्टमेटिक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन दैट इज पैराडिग्मेटिक रिलेशंस ऑफ वर्ड्स एंड सिंटैग्मेटिक रिलेशंस आर जनरली रिलेटेड टू को अकरेंस इन द सेम कॉन्टेक्स्ट। Co-occurrence in the context. So this is syntagmatic and paradigmatic, a kind of relation. So let's learn today. These were two approaches in linguistics to the study of language. Number one, that is synchronic study in linguistics. What is synchronic study? It is a study of language at a given time. This approach sees language as a living whole, existing as a state at one particular time. The changes which are taking place in material are considered irrelevant to the main focus of the study. सो सिंक्रोनिक स्टडी उसे कहा जाता है कि जिस तरह से हम स्टडी लैंग्वेज को करें आज के हवाले से, वी आर नॉट कंसर्न विद द स्टडी ऑफ लैंग्वेज वर्ड्स historically from the past. For example, there is a word in English you, but previously, historically, we find that it was the word ye. So today we are irrelevant to main focus of learning the word or using the word ye. Rather, we are supposed to only use you. So this is called synchronic study of language. Let's learn here the second term, that is diachronic study in linguistics. The diachronic approach traces the historical development of the language and records the changes that have taken place in it between two ages or times. So diachronic approach is actually the traces of historical development. हम historically जब words की study करते हैं उसको समझने के लिए, for example, most of the time we learn idioms which are having the previous background, the historical background. For example, the idiom is Achilles heel. Now there is a long story behind that idiom or idiomatic expression. So without learning the historical background, sometimes it's very difficult to grasp the exact meaning of the word. So, according to diachronic study, that the words or semantics are to be studied historically. Thus, it is historical study of language according to Lyon's 1983, page 35. It investigates language changes as they have occurred from time to time and the evolution of languages. So, the evolution of languages and changes of language is actually the study or diachronic study in linguistics. Saussure in 1916, who made this distinction, gives priority in linguistics to the synchronic approach and observes that the two approaches must be kept separate. Now, this distinction was given by Saussure, as we have been talking about these fundamental dichotomies which are given by most of them Saussure. So here he has made the differences between these terminologies. So again, diachronic relation, we are making it more understanding from the given definition from Longman's Dictionary of Language Teaching and Applied Linguistics. And according to this dictionary, an approach to linguistics which studies how languages change over time. For example, the change in the sound systems of Roman languages from their roots in Latin and other languages to modern times are the study of changes between early English to modern British English. So, the difference we sometimes talk about, the difference between the early English and the modern British English. So, this is the major example of learning diachronic relation. How and what changes occurred when we have been talking about the words today and what were very different previously in history. When we are talking about the most of the words which are taken from different languages previously, for example, Roman and Latin. So today in English, they are having different forms. So this total study is the study of diachronic in linguistics. Again, diachronic relation, for example, here are some of the examples, the origin of the term goodbye. Now, this is very interesting to learn how this word goodbye came into being. For example, goodbye comes from the words God be with ye. The first documented use of the goodbye appeared in a later English writer and scholar, Jabril Harvey wrote in 1573. So ये word जो goodbye है ये basically आया है good God be with ye में से, और ये पहली बार जो है वो letter जो है वो जो हमें मिलता है God by ye, ये जो है वो जब्राइल ने जो है वो हार्वी ने लिखा था 1573 में. As time went on, it is believed the phrase was influenced by terms like good day and good evening. So transitioning then from God be with ye to God be we, and finally adding in today's blessing word goodbye. So you see how changes occurred with the passage of time. So the historical this understanding of terminologies is actually the diachronic relation in linguistics. Here is another example of diachronic relation, that is we are talking about the origin of the term okay. Historically it was sarcastic word used in a newspaper, Boston Morning Post, in 1839 stored the abbreviation OK next to the words all correct. Now you see, previously it was the word all correct, which later on used by newspapers, a sarcastic use of okay instead of all correct. So this term okay came into being. So this is the historical understanding of the words, the terminologies we have been talking about, and this relation in linguistics is called diachronic relation. So today we are not concerned at all with this all correct, but today we only use okay, which is synchronic relation. So there are these are the differences between these two terminologies. It was all about today's. Here are these terms, long and parole. When we come across the study of linguistics, there we find a number of confusing pair of words, or dichotomies. Today we are going to learn the difference between long and parole. So when we are talking about these terms, Ferdinand de Saussure made distinctions between these two terms, which are closely related to each other. These terms are found in his works Course in General Linguistics in 1916. So let's learn what are the differences. When we're talking about long means language or tongue, and it is conventionally in one's mind or one who knows about language. So this is the abstract form of the rules of language in the speaker's mind. And when we are talking about parole, parole means speech or speaking. Parole is individual, variable, and concrete aspect of language. When we are talking about parole, so this is the concrete form of language, and long is an abstract form of language. This is within one's our speaker's mind, and parole is the actual use of language. So let's just define it in another way. Here again, long and parole. Long exists in the mind of each individual in the form of word images and knowledge of conventions. Conventions means rules and patterns. When we are talking about long, this exists in one's mind, the knowledge of language. The word images which we make in our minds is actually called long. And when we are talking about parole, on the other hand, when these conventions that exist in the mind as long are used in concrete form in actual speech. So the concrete actual speech is actually the parole. Writing, they become instances of parole. Parole is actual sounds and sentences produced by an individual speaker or writer. It is concrete physical manifestation of the abstract long that exists in the mind. So here are some of the examples I would like to convey through these pictures. So here you see mind, the knowledge of long or language within one's mind, that is the example of long. And when we are talking about parole, the actual production of speech sounds and the language, that is parole. So here again I would like to define in another way. So long and parole, Saussure considered langue as legislative side of language or the law of language. It means to say the legislation of language, the rules of language, that is law. However, when we are talking about parole, is consecutive side of the language because it uses the law or code of language. So this is the consecutive side of language, means how we are going to execute the legislation, that is actually parole. Again, this could have been defined through this example. Another useful comparison between langue and parole is made by the analogy of game of chess. In the game, the rules are determined and they are understood by all the players, but each game is different and depends on the individual performances, which differ from player to player. यहाँ पे अगर स्टूडेंट्स आप देखें तो व्हाट ही इज़ टॉकिंग अबाउट के जो रूल्स होते हैं चेस गेम के, सो वो रूल्स जो है वो आप लैंग्वेज की ज़बान में कह सकते हैं कि दीज आर लॉन्ग एंड हाउ इंडिविजुअली दे प्ले इट. इंडिविजुअल जो प्लेयर्स हैं वो जो खेल रहे होते हैं उसको एग्जीक्यूट कर रहे होते हैं, उसको जो वो इंडिविजुअल अपने माइंड के इस्तेमाल कर रहे होते हैं, सो दैट individual execution is actually called or is the example of parole. So here rules, the game of chess are legislative side and that is the same as langue. However, the individual's performance which differ from player to player is consecutive side of the game, which is analogically parole in linguistics. It is like this. You could see this video.
We're at Langue and Parole, but it looks like there's a chess tournament today.
Can you play chess?
Not really. Can you?
No, but Saussure talked about it. So there's probably a page about chess rules in the KPF.
I'll have a quick read while you find a parking spot.
The difference between langue and parole might be a bit like the difference between a game like chess and how it is played.
Yes. Langue is like the rules of chess, and parole is like a particular game being played.
So parole is like the unfolding bits of langue in time. But where is langue?
If we didn't already know about langue, we wouldn't be able to speak to and understand each other.
So langue must be something that both of us share.
Not just us, but the people out there listening to us.
That's right, Lyd. If they didn't know about langue, they wouldn't be able to understand us.
So langue must be something that we all share. It probably exists in some kind of virtual space inside our heads.
And parole is when we use it individually, when it unfolds in time.
What do you think came first? Langue or parole?
Saussure said that parole came first, but they are interdependent. A bit like us.
Here, competence and performance. The distinction made by the American linguist Noam Chomsky, it is a similar distinction as langue and parole. So here I would like to introduce you about Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky is a versatile personality. He is an American linguist, philosopher, cognitive scientist, historian, and political activist. Ferdinand de Saussure is called the father of linguistics. Nonetheless, sometimes Chomsky is called the father of modern linguistics. So when we are talking about Noam Chomsky, he has his own importance in linguistics. Let's learn the differences between these two terms, which are given by Noam Chomsky. Competence, according to linguists, is the native speaker's knowledge of his language. So this is the native speaker's knowledge of his language. And the production of actual sentences is actually the performance. as while performance is production of actual sentences in use in real life situations. Again, so a speaker's knowledge of the structure of a language is speaker's linguistics competence. So different speakers' different knowledge is actually the linguistics competence. However, and the way in which he uses it is linguistics performance. So this is the competence in knowledge one possesses, that is the linguistics competence, and individuals who perform, who speak differently, that is linguistics performance. Again, I would like to define with another way. This understanding of competence versus performance was given by Chomsky closely resembles the Langue and Parole dichotomy given by Saussure, but it differs in that while Langue is the same with every user, competence may differ from person to person. And we are talking about Langue, we are talking about the language learned through the culture. So what the culture is, it is same, the Langue is. And when we are talking about competence may differ from person to person because it is related to psychology. Saussure's understanding of Langue emphasizes its predominantly social aspect. It is the social aspect because language is social, while Chomsky's term competence is based on psychology and presumes individual differences between human beings. So this is something psychological. Here again, I would like to make differences between Saussure and Noam Chomsky's studies, as Saussure was a behaviorist and said that language is learned through society. And when we are talking about Noam Chomsky, who is the founder of cognitive science, and he was of the view that individuals have inherent language device and competence. It varies from person to person. And according to Saussure, who is behaviorist, that language is learned through society. So this is actually the difference between competence and Langue. And here is competence versus performance. Thus, a speaker A may be more competent than B, though they may share the same conventions of language. Chomsky's view of competence is also based on the idea of an inbuilt language acquisition device. Here, when we are talking about Chomsky he says that human being has capacity to learn language. He has actually a language acquisition device. Through that device, he is inbuilt capacity to learn a language that enable a person to acquire competence. So here again I have made distinctions in competence versus performance. The differences between Langue, as we are talking about, Langue is a social setting, but when we are talking about competence, it is psychological setting, because this is something inbuilt competency, right? So when we're talking about Langue, not designed, because it is later learned, but when we are talking about competence, it is designed. When we are talking about Langue, it is behaviorist view. So when we are talking about competence, it is cognitivist view. So again, when we are talking about Langue, it is conventional. It is learned through the conventions, patterns, laws of language. But when we are talking about competence, it is something inherited. So this was actually the difference between Langue and competence. So here we have learned about competence and performance as well, because when we are talking about competence, it is the individual's competency, it is the individual's knowledge of language, but performance is the actual use of that knowledge, the actual production of sounds and the words, that is performance. Here, sign versus symbol. Both signs and symbols are graphical presentations, but people often use them interchangeably. So this is the graphical presentation how graphs are made. So sign and symbols are likewise. The main difference between the two is that a sign is a language on its own and it is used to communicate something to people. It is broader term and symbol comes under it. How we are going to define later. And here we are going to talk about sign versus symbol. The language is made up of signs, means language is composed of signs. Many signs often have a universal meaning that is shared by people from various backgrounds. In fact, as Saussure says, sign is the central fact of language. A symbol is something that is accepted by a certain group of people or general population. It can be interpreted differently by people from different backgrounds. It is likewise here. So this is a sign. It has a universal meaning that is child. The sign is for a child. But it has various symbols. Symbolizes to innocence, love, affection, or it may be ignorance, illiteracy. So there could have been various symbols of this sign. So there could have been an explanation of signs and symbols. Again, when we are talking about sign versus symbol, a sign is physical marker which carries some information. The information it gives is direct, brief, and precise. This is opposed to symbol, which means more than mere indication. Now you see sign is the physical marker and symbol is opposed to that, and it is or it means a symbol conveys a message of deeper meaning and is open to interpretation, right? It contains more information and it stands in place of something as means of pointing towards it directly. It could have been explained in the following example. Like this is the picture. For example, the gesture of waving one's hand is a sign. This is actually one sign, but it has various symbolic meanings. So this could have been another explanation of sign and symbol. Again, sign versus symbol. Similarly, a way of dressing or eating is a sign which signals some social practice or belief. This concept, when applied to all our behavior and to our society and culture, show us that our entire culture is made up of signs which are of a spatial significance or meaning in our culture. Saussure's notion of sign in this sense has led to the growth of a whole area of study of the operation of signs in culture and society called semiotic. Likewise, you see, this is the sign of Punjabi culture, a Sindhi culture. Now, there are various signs likewise in different societies and differently are having different meanings in the cultures. Again, we are going to learn sign versus symbol. The linguistic sign consists of two parts. The signifier and the signified are the word which signifies and the object that is signified, such as the following picture. Now you see the following picture of an apple, that is a sign, and it has two parts, signifier and signified. Now signifier is actually the physical existence or sound or a word of image of that apple. Now you see this is signified, a mental concept. Now there could have been various mental concepts like when we are looking at apple, that could have been fruit, that could have been the symbol of freshness, an apple could have been the symbol of health. So you see there are various mental concepts or symbols of that sign or signifier. So again, a symbol is kind of sign that signifies several concepts on the basis of the primary relationship between signifier and signified. That is, the word tree signifies the concept of tree. This is primary relationship. It may also signify life, growth, hope, etc. And when it does, it becomes not only a sign but also a symbol. So a symbol is built of various associative relationships between the signifiers and the signified. That is why we say that language is system of symbolic sign. So here is another explanation of sign and symbol with the help of this picture of tree. How and where are the signifiers and signified, and how these images are made. And you see, sign is made up of signifier and signified taken together. This is the meaning of sign. And symbol is based on concepts and associative relationship between signifier and signified. So these are some of the mental concepts, or we could say symbols, through this picture. Now again, I have made another explanation with the help of Islamic concept of sign and symbol. Islam also renders a concept of sign and symbol. For example, in the creation of heavens and the earth, and the alternation of night and day, there are signs for people of intelligence. Those who remember God is standing, sitting, and lying on their sides and reflect on the creation of the heavens and the earth. Al Quran 3:19. Now you see, this is actually a Quranic verse. Now you see, Almighty Allah, He says that I have rendered various signs in this world, that is the creation of heavens and the earth and alternation of night and day. Now these are the signals for the, are signs for the intelligent people. Now what is the symbol? Symbol is that there is the creator of these all signs, these all objects, like this heaven or earth or the alternation of night and day. Now there is the creator. That creator, the concept of that mental concept of that creator is actually the symbol. Substance and form. The actual sounds and graphic symbols are substance of language. When they are arranged in order, they attain form. You see, in this picture, these sounds and graphic symbols are the substance of language. But here you could see, when they are arranged in order, they attain form. Like bat, nation, drum means sounds, and we arrange these chunks into complete language, and out of letters we arrange some of the words. Again, you see, when we are talking about substance, all distinct sounds and written scripts are the substance of language. It is meaningless, only noisy. It means all the sounds, the basic sounds in language, like b, p, t, th, sh. So these are only the sounds, are noises. But when they make into form, they become meaningful. Like in this way, when sounds, letters, words are arranged in a certain way, we can see some meanings in them. It becomes form of a language. So when these sounds are been arranged into form, into words, into complete phonemes, so these would have been the meaningful chunks. You see, it is just like a shapeless log of wood. The carpenter make a chair, table out of it. When there is just a log of wood, this is meaningless. But when we make out of this wood a chair, a table, so it would be meaningful. He changes substance into form. You see, when the carpenter, he makes the wood into table and chair, so it would have been meaningful and it would have been a form. Likewise, in this picture, you see, so this is actually language quality when we are talking about. This is totally meaningless and this is meaningful. How these letters are changed into words and the phones are changed into phonemes. into meaningful chunks. So this is the difference between substance and form. Again, when we are talking about substance and form, in formal linguistics, form and substance usually refer to the actual elements or units of language, like atoms and molecules in chemistry, like proton and electron in physics. So in the case of phonology, it is phonemes. In morphology, it is morphemes. In syntax, it is constituents of sentence, of course. So you see, it would have been likewise. You see, substances, these individual sounds, it means sa, ta, ra, na. So these are individual substances. Likewise, these sounds and these. But when we make them into order, like we make these sounds into complete order, so it would have been histrion, like this tenth, like this into clean. So this would have been a form, an arranged form of or out of this substance. So see, these are two pictures. There are bricks, individual bricks. These make a substance for a wall. Now here it is wall. These bricks are arranged into form. So this is a complete form of language. Thanks for attention. Hopefully this would have been a very helpful for all of you. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.